and we are going over 6 different methods that you should not be using to remove your negative items from your credit report. And guess what? Even if you stop right now and use what I'm going to show you and explain to you and what I've been talking about for only 8 years through 800 videos, you can still give yourself a chance to remove your negative items from your credit report. I mean, that's what I put these videos out here for, right? Now, we're going to go over all 6 of these, but if you find that you are using one of these methods or even more than one of these methods, then please listen to me. These are things that I've perfected over the course of 12 years, and I show you what works for my clients, right? And so because I'm sharing this information with you and proving to you that it works and that I'm getting the score increases and removing these things from your credit report, then hey, guess what? It's probably going to benefit you to follow just a little bit of what I'm saying, right? Because I don't get a kickback when you go and you get your $500,000 mortgage or your $30,000 credit card or your $50,000 car. No, I don't. So the only benefit to me is to see a comment from you saying, hey, I used this method and Kristen, it's awesome, it worked. Took me a couple of months, but I was able to remove my medical collections or my charge off with Capital One. And guess what? That is exactly what I'm talking about. That is what I want to see, all right? Now, obviously, if you don't want to do it yourself, you can go right over to my740.com, my740.com, schedule a call with me, and I'll see if I can help, right? But as far as removing these things from your credit report yourself, these are the things that you do not want to do, okay? And again, I'm going to explain to you how to do a legal and permanent credit sweep the right way. So the very first thing, and you know what? We're going to go backwards. You do not want to dispute with the original creditor first prior to disputing with the bureaus. Now, here's the deal. A little bit of a caveat here. I don't dispute with the original creditor really at all. Okay, if it's within the statute of limitations, meaning that they can still take you to court in your state because, you didn't pay it, whatever, I'm not going to dispute it. Why? Because it puts you in the limelight and says, hey, here I am. I'm trying to remove my negative items. And you know what? I probably have money to do things and I would like to be sued. Now, you might also be saying to yourself, well, yeah, they can sue me, but I can also get an attorney and I can, fight it in court and blah, blah. Why do you want to go through all that when you can just stay away from it? Another thing that you want to understand is that you cannot, if you want to have rights, right? I don't want to lose my rights, right? If you want to utilize your rights under Section 623, then hey, you actually have to first dispute with the credit bureaus. Why? Because it says so. It says that when you dispute with the original creditor prior to disputing the bureaus, you do not have these rights afforded to you. Now, however, when you first dispute with the bureaus and then you dispute with the original creditor, then yeah, guess what? They have to abide by these things and then it's a violation and blah, blah, blah. And speaking of violations, we are going to be coming out with a video very, very soon, probably this week, that explains how to enforce things when there's a violation. Now, why am I saying that? What is it that you're talking about? Well, there's all these videos and these courses and these people over the, past couple of years that want you to think getting a violation automatically means that your negative item is going to come off. They didn't respond in 30 days. Boop, violation comes off. They didn't notify you of the reinsertion within 5 business days. Boop, automatically comes up. No, dude. No. If you just look at the criminal justice system, for an example, those are real violations and real issues and real crimes and everything. And look at how many people get away with things, and even police officers, right? And no, I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about the fact that we're not dealing with anyone going to jail. No one's getting in trouble. No one's losing their job. We're dealing with consumer law. So if there's all these violations and these things over here that have to be enforced, right? Then why do you think that it's just going to be as simple as there's a violation? Oh, someone's getting in trouble. It's got to come off and it's just going to happen. No. You have to go through a process to be able to force this consequence of the violation, right? The thing coming off your credit report because of said violation. So that is what we're going to be talking about at a different time. But when you first dispute with the bureaus, now you're giving yourself the best possible opportunity because you are afforded certain rights, okay? So the next one is going to be sending a validation of debt dispute to a debt buyer. Now, what is a debt buyer? Well, it's a collection agency, right? But it's a little bit different because regardless of the amount that is paid, because everyone gets all caught up under, oh, well, they paid for the accounts and blah. Dude, Doesn't matter if it's 2 cents or $200,000. They paid for the account, right? In booklets of like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people. And now they want to collect on their money. And it didn't just get assigned to them. Like, let's say I go down the street to the hospital. There's a hospital about 4 blocks from where I live. And, I get a medical collection because I didn't have insurance and I didn't pay it, right? Now, they're going to assign that debt to a third-party collection agency. So if it's not paid by me, the consumer, that hospital is not going to get paid, right? Because they have like a 60-40 or in some bad cases, a 70-30 type of deal where, they get X amount, they get X amount. Now, that is a third-party collector. Now, a debt buyer example would be if you get a loan or let's just say a credit card through Capital One and you don't pay it. Now they're going to sell it to a company such as Portfolio Recovery or Midland or Calvary or whatever. So now they legally own the account. In the hospital example, they don't own the account. They're just assigned. They're collecting on behalf of, right? There's a huge difference. We have an owner over here. Now they legally hold this account, and over here, they're just collecting on behalf of. Like they said, we don't have time for this. We don't want to keep it in-house. Collect. If you get it, great. If not, whatever. Okay. That's the difference between them. So it kind of works like this because it's much more difficult and much more impactful to your credit. And it's, it's just a lot harder and bigger to remove credit cards and loans and anything where there is a bank involved. So they're actually going to put more into it to be able to collect from you. Okay, so that's the difference between a debt buyer and a third-party debt collector. Now, they are still a collection agency, but they're going to go after the money a little bit harder. And this is another reason why they allow you to do a pay for delete. You can't do that with a lot of other accounts. There's only like 2%, 2 to 4% of collectors or really anybody, and it's never going to be for the actual original account itself, that'll allow for a pay for delete. Okay. So when you are sending out this validation of debt to a debt buyer, you're putting yourself in the limelight and you're saying, hey, sue me. If you go back to my very first big video, it said, it said, warning, be careful with the validation of debt method, right? And a lot of people loved it. A lot of people hated it because guess what? They were doing what they weren't supposed to, okay? And obviously people don't want to be pointed out when they're doing what they're not supposed to. So anywho, do not send a validation of debt to a debt buyer collector. You want to send it to, a company collecting on behalf of, Progressive or, your local gym, the library, the hospital. Dude, do it. Do you. Go for it. That's fine. But do not, unless you just want to, get in trouble, or if it's past the statute of limitations for your state and you really know what you're doing, don't send out a validation of debt. You are going to do nothing other than put yourself in a bad position. And we already have all these cards stacked against us. It's only getting more difficult to remove negative items than it ever was before. When I first started doing this, dude, I didn't even know what I was doing when I was getting deletions. Obviously, it took me 12 years to get where I am today with a ton of failures before I ever succeeded and then failed and failed again, right? But it's getting more and more difficult as time goes on, and all these changes are coming into practice now, and they're not for us; they're against us. So you have to keep this in mind when you think that it's just so simple to remove negative items. No. We're dealing with money here, okay? It may be on paper, but it's still money, and these people wanted their money and they didn't get it, right? Or they didn't get it on time. So they're not going to reward anybody for that happening to them, okay? So always keep that at the forefront of your mind. Now, let's go to the next one. And we recently saw this in the news, and I'm not going to say who it was, but the illegal identity theft method. Now, if you're wondering what type of credit sweep I do, it is not identity theft. You cannot, I don't care for any amount of money, you cannot get me to do the illegal identity theft method for you. Now, what is that? That's where you get the police report and the affidavit and you're like, hey, I'm a victim of fraud, blah, 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 pursuant to section 605B. No, dude, I'm not doing that. You do you if you want to. You have no problem with the cops knocking at your door. Hey, I don't know what to tell you, but that's not going to be me. All right, I get legal permanent deletions using this right here, and it has nothing to do with police reports. Now, what I'm referring to is recently somebody who owns or owned a credit repair business. Basically what they're saying is that there's a multi-million-dollar scheme where they were, using the local police department to create all these police reports and falsely state that someone was a victim of fraud to remove these negative items from the credit report. And we're talking about tons and tons of people and millions of dollars, right? And this business owner got arrested. So I've been telling you guys for the past 8 years, do not utilize this method. And it's just, I'm not happy to see that this actually happened, in such a public way, but it just goes to reinforce everything that I say, because everything that I say is exactly what it is. I research everything before it ever comes out my mouth. I practice everything before it ever comes out my mouth. All right. So, do not use the illegal identity theft method. And even if it wasn't illegal, let's just say that there was no police report involved, right? It's just a, identity theft, credit sweep and, hey, I'm a victim of fraud. Well, the thing is, it's getting more and more difficult to utilize this, and you end up spending 2 to 3 years attempting to prove that you're an actual victim of identity theft. Why? Why, Kristen? Why is that? Well, millions of people used it when they weren't supposed to. And because they did that, now for actual victims of fraud, people who actually have their stuff stolen from them, right? It's almost impossible to remove the negative items because they have to spend all this time proving that it wasn't them, right? They have to prove that I wasn't even in the state. I was flying from one, end of the country to the other. I was doing this. I was doing that. Here's my proof that I was, overseas, whatever. I mean, just imagine having to go back and document all this stuff just to prove that someone stole something from you. I mean, I don't know. I don't know about you, but I think that's kind of crazy, right? That's a little bit nuts. Well, having said that, let's go to the next one. Phone disputes. Anything that seems like it is a convenience to you is only a convenience to them. And we're going to talk more about that in just a second. Not only do you have to wait about 3 hours before you ever get on the phone with someone, and then you have to go bend over backwards proving that you are you, but how are you going to use the Gero formula to dispute something on the phone with the bureaus and you have nothing to prove that you did any sort of dispute? Because obviously they're recording their calls, but even if you record your call, you can't use it in court, right? Record a conversation. You're not going to be able to use it in court. So what are you going to do? You're just not going to dispute online. Dispute on the phone. That's our next one, dispute online. So if you go back through my 800 videos, you're going to see that I tell you a lot, don't dispute online. You're going to give up all your rights. And guess what? People still do it all the time because nobody listens to me. And hey, I don't know what to tell you. When you dispute online, you are giving up your rights under Section 623 and Section 611. These are very, very important and you need to know about them. So just a couple of things here. When you dispute online, like I was saying about the convenience, it seems like it's super convenient. You go on Credit Karma or Experian or whatever, and you just choose a couple of things and wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, now your dispute is through. Well, guess what? Your dispute went right into their automation system. It did not pass go and it went right in, right? It gave you no opportunity to, go to a human and to do this and that. No, dude, it just went right into their automation system and right over digitally, and it comes back as verified as accurate. Now, let's just say that it didn't come back as verified as accurate. What happens? Well, you might get a deletion. Wow, congratulations, you got something deleted. And then it goes right back on your credit report. And because you disputed online, you gave up your right to fight that, right? Because you gave up Section 611 where it says that, they have to notify you and blah, blah, blah of the reinsertion. Well, they don't have to. They don't have to do that. They also don't have to respond in certain manners. They don't have to forward things to creditors and collectors. They don't have to do a bunch of stuff. I highly recommend that you do not dispute online if you don't want to give up your rights, okay? Now, the next one is going to be the most important, right? And we saved this for last because obviously I want you to watch this entire thing, okay? Templates. If you are sending something out that you didn't personally write yourself from jump, or even if, structures are good, right? Structures are good, especially with the learning process and all of that. But having said that, you don't want to be sending out something that is law heavy, more than one page unless you have multiple accounts. And, that says pursuant to this and pursuant to that and blah, blah, blah. No. Don't send out a Section 609 letter. Don't use a 611 letter. Don't use a 605 letter. Don't use a 604 letter. Don't say Section 1681 or, the U.S. code, blah, blah, blah. Don't do it. The way that you remove negative items from your credit report is when you are writing a custom factual dispute, backing it with the information from your credit report, because we're dealing with facts, okay? It's the same thing as an attorney in court is not going to use one, writ or a motion for all of your charges and all of your issues. No, it's going to be individual, right? If you have 10 things, they're going to be 10 arguments. I mean, just imagine that, right? So another thing is with a credit sweep, this allows you legally and permanently to dispute the negative items on your credit report, and that is the actual solution here. That is what I do for my clients. That is what I show you how to do, and it's very, very, very simple when you finally understand how to use it, okay? Now, that's what I've been trying to teach you for the last 8 years. That's what I've been trying to teach you going past, back 800 videos, right? It's a simple formula that I came up with that I use for every single client. And again, if you want to learn how to do this, go through my videos, take the time. Don't just send me a message and say, hey, I don't know how to do this. Well, that's because you're not looking, okay? So we have the AJERO formula, AJERO. Action, justifier, element, reason, outcome. Delete this account for inaccuracy because the date last active reports as 1/2020, 3/2015, 4/2018. Obviously, that has all the facts in there. Obviously, those 3 dates don't match. And guess what? The date last active is right at the top of the hierarchy impact when we're disputing really difficult things like collections and charge-offs and repossessions, all right? So if you want to learn more about disputing the right way, use the links down in the description, okay? Now, if you want to see if I can do this for you, again, my740.com. All right, so that is it for today. I'm going to see you later, and we're going to stop this right now. But these were the 6 different methods that you do not want to utilize because they're not going to remove your negative items, right? If you want to get them off, this is the only way that you should be disputing. All right, so I'm going to see you later. I have a ton of things that are coming out for you this week, and I'm super excited about it, and you should be too. All right, I'm going to see you later. Bye.